Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and tonight this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD. I'm here to answer any questions you have about Lyme disease, and I'll try to provide the answers to the best of my ability, and mostly that's going to be based on experience that I have from treating Lyme over too many years here, unfortunately. Fortunately, I guess, because I enjoy doing it. My mission is to help as many people as possible to recover from this illness, and one way to do that is by participating in these webinars with you. So welcome here. I see some familiar names here tonight, and I also see some new names as well too. In terms of how these webinars work, you create them with the questions that you ask. And how you can ask your questions is there is a chat box over on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you go ahead and write your questions in that chat, once you send it, it shows up on my screen. I think you still see your question. You don't see the other ones until I post them, though. And I try to take no more than one question per person unless we run out of questions. And that happens sometimes. We're still at the end of, or near summer, the end of summer here, and a lot of people still have other activities going on. We have a pretty good crowd here tonight, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in terms of questions. You may have a chance to actually ask two of them. Tomorrow morning, you will get an email from me telling you how to get a copy of the recording. Okay, so yes, I am making a recording of tonight's webinar, and it should be ready tomorrow morning. Usually I have it ready by around 7:30 to 8 o'clock. Seattle time or Pacific Standard Time. So look for that email to come. If you don't happen to get that email, I also post them on the webinars page at our www.treatlyme.net site, which is our Lyme disease information site. And I'll show you some various resources on that site tonight, including writings of the Treat Lyme book, which is our comprehensive do-it-yourself, easy to understand Lyme disease treatment manual. All right. So with no further ado, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started here with the first question tonight. And let's see. Ginny says hi. Hi, Ginny. I'm not going to post that one, but thank you for saying hi. Oh, and then you do have a question here. So let me go ahead and show that. Okay. So hi, Jenny. Let's see. Is it possible to get gas out of the urethra? Strange happening on Zith, garlic having lots of bowel gas and some from the urethra. Okay, so everyone, the urethra is the tube that comes out of the bladder that you pee out of, okay? And so, Jenny, I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen somebody get gas out of their urethra before, and obviously it is common to have intestinal gas, and garlic that you're having sometimes can give intestinal gas. Zithromax, because it's an antibiotic, can give intestinal gas too. But I haven't seen gas occur in the urethra. And so I guess I would need to ask a lot more questions to figure out why it is you're having that sensation, as to whether it actually is gas or if it's more of a sensation. And that would obviously be hard to do in this kind of a format. So I don't think I have a good response for you on that one. So anyhow, I'll leave it at that. Good luck to you, Jenny. Okay, let's see here. Bear with me here, everyone. I just got to clean off Jenny's question here so I can move on to the next one. All right. Hello, Marianne. Welcome here tonight. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Do you think having a staph infection can exacerbate Lyme symptoms? And should the ATP fuel be taken with food or without? Okay. So, in terms of can a staph infection, and I assume what you mean is a skin staph infection. Everyone's staph is a bacteria that can infect our skin, can cause lesions or sores on our skin. And I assume that's what you mean by this. So it doesn't necessarily, staph is not going to make Lyme worse, but what it can do is it can trigger a group of chemicals which are called cytokines to be made in a greater amount. Okay, so let's talk about what cytokines are and why that may make it look like your Lyme got worse. So cytokines, everyone, are made by white blood cells when they try to get rid of a germ. And so they're made by white blood cells when they see a Lyme germ or they see a staph germ, for instance. And what happens with cytokines, they're good and they're bad. On the good side, cytokines cause more white blood cells to be made to fight an infection. They draw those white blood cells to where the infection is, and they help those white blood cells work better, okay? So that's all very good. The trouble is in Lyme, the immune system doesn't do a great job, but it keeps trying harder and harder, and eventually it makes too many cytokines. Too many cytokines give you what we call Lyme disease symptoms. And in fact, what Lyme disease symptoms really are excess cytokine symptoms, okay? So excess cytokines make you hurt, they give you fatigue, they can disturb the sleep centers of your brain, they make it so you can't think, they can disturb how your hormones work, they give you muscle pains, joint pains. I could go down the whole list of what we call Lyme disease symptoms, and what you would see is that those are really excess cytokine symptoms, okay? Now, if you get another infection, like a staph infection, or if you get too many yeast living in your intestines from being on all those antibiotics, sometimes that can trigger more cytokines, and those increased cytokines cause more cytokine symptoms, which are actually the same as Lyme symptoms, okay? So when you have a staph infection, or you have a yeast infection, or you have any other kind of infection, like virus infections, sometimes it'll make it look like your Lyme got worse, but what really happens is you just have a situation where you've developed more cytokines, okay? And again, it's those cytokines that make you feel poorly, all right? So I think that may be what has happened with you here, okay? Now, in terms of the ATP fuel, I don't have a bottle here. I think that the ATP fuel and NT factor are recommended to be taken with food, or it's the other way around. My experience is it doesn't really matter. So I tell people to just do the best job getting it in. Look at what the bottle says. That probably is ideal. I'm just not remembering off the top of my head. But realize that even if you don't do it as the bottle says, if you take it with or without food, do it contrary to what the bottle says, then it still works. I find it working whether people take it with food or without food, okay? So ATP Fuel, everyone, is a supplement that's made by a company called Research Nutritionals. It helps repair the cell energy factories, which are called mitochondria. And mitochondria, we estimate somewhere about 300 to 400 mitochondria in a cell. And when you have chronic infection in you, sometimes the covering of the mitochondria get injured. And when it gets injured, there isn't the ability for the mitochondria to generate adequate cell fuel, okay? So people have fatigue, and they may have a hard time repairing. Now, generally what I do in terms of fixing mitochondria is I will do all the steps that we have in our Lyme disease treatment guidelines, and I'll show you that in a minute. But if people are not getting better by 6 months or so, treating and repairing mitochondria is one of those things that I'll start thinking about. Okay, the reason I wait 6 months is often just getting the germs out, supporting the adrenal glands, thyroid glands, and some of the other things we recommend in our Lyme disease treatment guidelines will be enough to get the mitochondria to start repairing themselves. But if not, ATP fuel or a major component of it called NT factor, which is actually what I prefer, can rebuild the mitochondria too, all right? So let me do a quick screen share here because I want to show you what I mean by our Lyme disease treatment guidelines and what I think are the essential steps you should take throughout your Lyme germ treatment. And especially if by 6 to 9 months these steps aren't helping you, then there's additional things you want to do, which includes possibly fixing your mitochondria, okay? So let me get set up to do a screen share here. All right. Okay, everyone. So this is the Treat Lyme book and our Lyme disease information site called treatlyme.net, or we call it Treat Lyme and Associated Diseases, but the URL is www.treatlyme.net. The most significant part of this site is our Treat Lyme book, okay? But the other thing we have, and the Treat Lyme book is where you're going to find most of our articles, all right? So, and you can navigate it using everything over here. In addition to the Treat Lyme book, we offer on this site our free Lyme disease treatment guidelines, okay? Now you can find a copy of this in the Treat Lyme book too, but this is our Lyme disease treatment guidelines is called the Successful Treatment Recipe, Essential Steps to Health. Now, I'm not going to go through every point here, but I just want to show you a few things. I'm going to kind of walk you through it if my mouse will work. Uh-oh. This is not looking good. It looks like my mouse is having a hard time here. All right, so the first thing you want to do is get plenty of sleep, okay? Sleep restores the immune system. Sleep also lowers cytokines, all right? So it's good to go ahead and get sleep. Next thing that you want to do is to do things to lower those cytokines that I was just telling you about, all right? And what I like to use for that is something called curcumin. Curcumin is a 500 milligram pill. And to use it, you want to take one pill 3 times a day. Curcumin comes from the Ayurvedic or the East Indian seasoning turmeric. It's a major component of it. You want to use it to lower cytokines because lowering cytokines helps reduce symptoms. But all those excess cytokines I just told you about suppress the immune system too, okay? So part 1 of getting well means get sleep. Part 2 is lower those cytokines. I like to use curcumin to do that, all right? Next thing you want to do is help your body deal with stress. I like using an Ayurvedic herb to do that called ashwagandha. This has been used for centuries in East Indian medicine, also known as Ayurvedic medicine, and also in Chinese medicine because it's found to help the body deal with stress. All right, fourth thing you want to do is correct any hormonal imbalances. So we have a section here on hormones. Read through this. We tell you how to figure out if you have low thyroid or if you have low adrenals, okay? And sorry, my mouse isn't working here. In a minute, I'm going to have to go get a replacement mouse. All right, so we tell you down here in this section how to figure out if you have low adrenals or low thyroid and the steps to take, all right? You want to make sure you're on a good multivitamin, and that's what part 5 says here. Our favorite multivitamin actually is to use a product made by Integrative Therapeutics called the Energy Infusion. 1 scoop 1 time a day, or if you cannot tolerate that, the other option would be to do something made by Thorne called Metaclear. You want to use a good multi because it supports detoxification efforts in the liver. Also, will have good nutrients that help your brain work better and your immune system work better too, all right? 6th thing that you want to do in your Lyme disease treatment is to make sure that you take care of getting yeast out, all right? And we tell you how to figure out in this section whether you have yeast, and that is to use our yeast screening score. Where are we here? Down here at the bottom, let's see. In this section, you can see there's this yeast screening questionnaire. If you score over 140, you have too many yeast, and we tell you the steps to take to get rid of them. Too many yeast, just like that staph I was just telling you about, can make it so that you have increased cytokines, okay? Part 7, now notice this is the 7th part, is to take care of your Lyme infection, all right? We consider the other 6 steps to be as important or even more important in your recovery than actually using the antibiotics. You have to support your body to recover from this, okay? All right, other steps that you want to take is to do some basic detoxification steps. Read part 8 about the things we recommend to do that. Part 9 says if you have co-infections, treat them like Bartonella, Babesia. All right, and then one last thing, try to look at getting exercise, okay? Now, the last step that we have in our treatment protocol is the steps to take at 6 months and beyond. And you'll notice here we address many things, but we say to deal with mitochondrial dysfunction here, okay? And that is to use ATP fuel or the NT factor. Either one of those can be useful for that, all right? Now, to read more about what to do for mitochondria, you can find information within our Treat Lyme book, okay? And you would find articles in our section on energy, actually. All right, this is our chapter on energy. And if you read down here, you're going to find steps that you can take, basic steps for energy and what you can do to power up your mitochondria too. All right. All right, so that's what I got here. Let me go back. I'm going to end the screen share. Okay, so here I am back again. All right, everyone. I tell you what, I am going to do quickly because my mouse is not working. I'm going to go get another one. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to step out. I'll be right back. All right, let me try to get this hooked up and then we'll get on with the webinar here. I apologize for this. All right, let me see if this new mouse is going to work or not, or if we're just going to have a hard time with my mouse tonight. Let's see here. That looks like it's going to work. Okay, good. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. Marianne, thank you for that question. And as many of you know that have watched these webinars over time, what I like to do is to take a question and try to find other information that you might get out of it. So I expanded on Marianne's question quite a bit here, but I hope that gave you some useful information too. Some of you may be seeing there's a little action going on in the background here. I happen to have two of my dogs here. You may see them bouncing around behind us. If you happen to see some black fur moving on the floor, that's them. All right, so let's go ahead and move on here. Thanks for that question, Marianne. All right, next question is from Brenda. Hi, Brenda. And welcome here, by the way. Let's see. Thanks, Dr. Ross, for these webinars. You're welcome. I enjoy doing them, actually. I have Lyme and Bart, and I'm currently on amoxicillin and Biaxin. Have tried Banderol and Cemento, but they make my ears ring and feel full. Should I keep trying to work with these herbs? Thanks. All right. So, let's see here. Hey, your ear is getting in the way. Can you go on up there? Thank you. I just saw his ears sitting behind there. All right. So everyone, Banderol, Cemento are two herb products, okay? Banderol is an extract from a tree called the Atoba tree, and Cemento is cat's claw. These two herbs together work about 85 to 90% of the time, in my experience, to help with Lyme. And they have as great of a chance of helping to treat the Lyme infection, the Lyme germ, as any antibiotic combination does. Okay, so antibiotic combinations orally also work about 85 to 90% of the time. All right, but they don't do anything for Bartonella. All right, and so I just want to say that to you. All right, but if you're looking for an herbal option about treating Lyme that is not to use antibiotics, the Banderol Cemento is just as good in terms of what I see as using prescription antibiotics, okay? All right, now amoxicillin and Biaxin that you're on will treat Lyme, but they really are not gonna work against Bartonella either. And in fact, in terms of Lyme treatment, what we have to remember with Lyme germs is that the Lyme germs can live in you in three separate forms. They have the ability to morph and actually exist in three different states. There's one form of the germ, which is called a spirochete, that looks like a corkscrew. Probably have seen many pictures of that on the internet. Then there also is a form of the germ that lives inside of your cells. We call that intracellular Lyme. And then finally, there's a microscopic cyst form of the germ, okay? Now, Biaxin is going to work inside of cells and is useful at treating intracellular Lyme, and it gets inside the spirochete and also treats that. The amoxicillin treats spirochete Lyme too. The problem is there's a third form of the germ, which is a microscopic cyst form of the germ, and your treatment is not really covering that on the two prescription antibiotics you're on. In terms of the Lyme germ, Banderol Cemento is great. It actually seems to treat all three forms of the germ. And in addition, it has the ability to remove a slime layer called biofilms that can cover the Lyme germ and block treatment, okay? So in terms of what you're on, you don't have any coverage for Bartonella at this point. And you're missing coverage of the Lyme germ for the cyst form of your germ, okay? Now you could easily add coverage for the cyst form of Lyme by adding a supplement called grapefruit seed extract. It comes as a 250 milligram pill, and you would want to take one pill 2 times a day. It's about, in my experience, it's about 80 to 90% as potent as the main prescription anti-cyst medicine we have, which is something called Flagyl, or its brother sister called tinidazole, okay? Tends not to have the toxic feeling that those do. All right, now, in terms of your ears ringing and feeling full on Banderol Cemento, that sounds like a side effect. And I don't know if you were to keep using it and just try to put up with it, if the ringing would go away eventually or become permanent. I just don't know. We don't have enough experience working with that. I would say that if you are having that kind of side effect, you may not want to push it, because sometimes even on prescription antibiotics, when you get ringing in your ears, if you try to keep using the antibiotic, it could become permanent. Now, what I'm trying to tell you about Banderol cemento is I don't know if it would become permanent, because we have no science to guide us as to whether it would or not. But I'd probably stay with your prescriptions, okay? Now, in terms of what to do for Bartonella, I'm not going to go into it right now, but I'm going to give you a resource on what you can do, because right now, again, I don't think your treatment is adequate in terms of going after Bartonella. So let me do a quick screen share here for you. Okay, so back in the Treat Lyme book, I'm going to go to the table of contents here, okay? And what I'm going to be looking for here is the section called Infection Treatment Plans, all right? And in here, if you want to take a look at it later, this is, there is an article in here called Kills Bartonella, a Brief Guide, okay? And what it basically lays out for you are the things that I think are essential for treating Bartonella, which is follow the first 7 steps of the successful treatment recipe, because that boosts your immune system, okay? And also, when we treat Bartonella, you want ideally to be on 2 prescription antibiotics. They seem to work about 85 to 90% of the time. There are some herbal combinations that you could do, and I mentioned them in the Kills Bartonella article. The trouble is they only seem to work maybe about 55 to 60% of the time, okay? But read this article later. It gives you the kind of information that you would want about how to treat Bartonella effectively, all right? So let me go back here. All right, so thanks for that question, Brenda, and good luck to you. Okay, let's see where we are here. Okay, next question looks like it's from Sherry and maybe in 2 parts here. Let me see. All right, hello Sherry, welcome here. Let's see, I've experienced vertigo and dizziness several times since contracting Lyme, BART and Babesia 2 years ago, and also suffer from migraines. Last time I had the Epley maneuver, I experienced severe pins and needles and numbness below the elbows for almost 1/2 an hour. Treatment doesn't lessen these episodes. And I'm going to show the second part, and then I'm going to come back and comment on a lot of these terms that Sherry's using here, okay? So here's her second part. How do I know if this is Lyme or migraine related, and how best to treat? Okay, let me go back to your original question. Okay, so I think what you're asking is, in terms of, you said, I don't know if this is Lyme or migraine related. I'm wondering if you're referring just to the pins and needle sensation and maybe the vertigo and dizziness. I'll try to answer it for all those, okay? All right, so everyone, vertigo means that you feel like you're on a merry-go-round, okay, or that you have a loss of balance or that things are spinning, okay? That's vertigo. Another, and some people call that dizziness, but it's a certain kind of dizziness called vertigo. Dizziness, on the other hand, many people mean they feel kind of cloudy in their head or foggy in their head, okay? All right. And those can be symptoms that you're going to see with Lyme or Bartonella. I don't really think of those so much as Babesia symptoms, just so you know. Those specific symptoms I think of as either being Lyme related or Bartonella related. Bartonella can give you a lot of neurologic symptoms, okay? All right, now for vertigo, there is a procedure, a maneuver that ear, nose, and throat doctors do called the Epley maneuver. And to understand what that is, I want to talk a little bit about one cause of vertigo, okay? So one of the causes, there's a part of our ear called the inner ear that has some fluid-filled chambers in it called the cochlea. And the cochlea has chambers that go in 3 different directions. There's a chamber that goes up, one to the side, and one, I think, down, if I'm correct. And in those chambers, there are little crystals that, when we move certain directions, will land on cells that have hair on them. and then set up a whole neurologic signaling that causes us to remain in balance, okay? Now, when somebody gets vertigo, one of the things we can do is to purposely try to get those crystals to land at positions on the hairs in there and to change the nerve signaling that's leading to vertigo. And that involves taking the head and positioning it in various positions to get these crystals to land at the right directions, or to reset the hairs and to get better, to change the vertigo that you're having, okay? Now, what I wonder is happening with you here, Sherry, is that when you move the neck around, sometimes it can lead to temporary pressure of the nerves as they come out of the neck. And I wonder, and in Lyme, that could happen more easily, because when you have Lyme or you have Bartonella, the nerves that come out of the neck that have to travel through very small openings in the bones can be inflamed. And now if you move the neck around, that can lead to repositioning of the bones and make it so that the openings that go through the various bones, that separate various bones, I should say, that because the nerves going through those are swollen into a very small opening, now you move the bones, that can put a lot of pressure on those swollen nerves, which could give temporary pinching, which would give you the pins and needle sensation below the elbows, okay? So what I wonder is if that sensation you were having was due to your nerves being swelled from Lyme and Bartonella, and the Epley maneuver by moving the neck created pressure in the narrow openings through which those nerves go between different bones, okay? So in terms of, I think it's the Epley maneuver that caused it, but the underlying problem is you got swelling and inflammation from your Lyme or your Bartonella. And again, I think the vertigo and dizziness sound like symptoms that you can get with Lyme and Bartonella as well too. All right, so I hope that answers your question. In terms of dizziness, one thing, you know, the Epley maneuver is a possibility. In terms of herbal medicines, I don't have good solutions here other than just making sure that you treat your Lyme and your Bartonella, okay? You might also want to consider getting acupuncture done and working with either a Japanese style acupuncturist or a Chinese style acupuncturist. Japanese style, they don't put the needles in that deeply, so you tend not to get the pain that you would from doing Chinese style acupuncture, okay? But those are some great energetic ways to work at taking care of your vertigo as well too, okay? Prescription medicine for vertigo, you could work with Valium is a reasonable way to do it. You could also work with something called scopolamine, which are little patches you put behind your ears. Either one of those are good prescription methods to help with the vertigo, okay? All right, good luck to you. Just getting rid of Sherry's questions here, everyone. All right, let's see. Next question is from Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Welcome here tonight. Let's see. When MethylGuard is recommended for a detox problem, how long does it need to be taken? Thanks, Dr. Ross. All right. So everyone, MethylGuard is a supplement that we can use to correct a detoxification problem that is called an MTHFR detox defect, okay? So what is MTHFR? Well, let's talk about that, all right? So the master detox chemical that is made in every one of our cells and is found in extremely high concentrations in the liver, and the liver is our detox organ that removes fat-based toxins like Lyme toxins or toxins that get made that we breathe in the environment, okay? Those get removed by the liver. The major detox chemical used to remove them in the liver is something called glutathione. In addition, glutathione is made in every one of our cells. It helps repair cell damage. And glutathione is very useful at helping to lower cytokines that I talked about earlier too. So glutathione has a lot of functions for us in our body. There's a whole article I've written about it as well too, and I'll show you where that is if you want to take a look at it later, because glutathione could be a very amazing supplement for some people in terms of helping with detox, repairing nerve injury is one of the key things that we use for that. Is very useful at lowering cytokines as well too, okay? So let me go back here, okay? So glutathione is a downstream product. It's made all the way down here, okay? Many chemical reactions upstream, way up here, is where we have to be able to take folate from our diet folate, and convert it into an activated folate. And there's an enzyme that governs that conversion, and that enzyme is called, it goes by the initials MTHFR, which stands for methytetrahydrofolate reductase. Don't practice saying that too much, it's a little bit of a mouthful, but it's methytetrahydrofolate reductase, or it goes by the name MTHFR. Okay, so MTHFR is responsible for converting diet folate into activated folate. And if you have damage to that enzyme, if it's not correctly manufactured, downstream, you're not going to get glutathione, and therefore you're not going to have adequate detox, okay? Now, you may still get some glutathione made, but also sitting between MTHFR up here and glutathione are a bunch of minor detox chemical reactions, okay? That still are important. They tend to be more minor. The big ones are those that use the glutathione. But you have some minor interruptions in some of your detox as well, too. All right. So there's two genes, two pieces of genetic material found on your chromosomes that regulate what that enzyme looks like and whether it works correctly. And we can do testing to see if you have a genetic defect of that enzyme. All right. And that's to do something called an MTHFR test. I'll tell you how to get that done. You can order it on your own. You don't even need a doctor to order it for you. There's a way to get it done on your own, okay? Now, if you have that defect, people with that defect often will be people that are very medicine sensitive. It just happens to be one of those things we see, is that people that have a lot of medicine sensitivities tend also to have this MTHFR defect, all right? So if you happen to be a person that reacts to a lot of supplements or prescription medicines, perhaps you're a person that has the MTHFR defect. Now, if you have, in terms of the defect, you have two genes, and you can have, on each of those genes, there's a mom part and a dad part, okay? So there's a gene called the C677T and another one called the A1298. I always butch up on the numbers, okay? But there's two of them. And on each of those genes, there's two components, a part you get from your mom and a part you get from your dad. In other words, two genes with two components means you can have four defects, okay? Now, somebody that has four defects is really going to have some detox problems. But you can have one defect and you can still have detox problems. Now, if you happen to have that detox problem, you're going to have it for life. Correcting for it with a MethylGuard does not make it go away, all right? So what's in MethylGuard? Well, MethylGuard has the activated folate in it. Remember I said that if you have the defect in the enzyme, you are not going to create enough of the activated folate. That activated folate is something called 5-methytetrahydrofolate or 5-MTHF, okay? And you can give it to a person. MethylGuard has 400, each pill of MethylGuard has 400 micrograms, actually, 400 micrograms of the methytetrahydrofolate, all right? And so I usually have people start at one pill, and then they gradually, as they tolerate it, go up to 2 pills and eventually to 3 pills one time a day. Now, as you open up your detox pathways by using the MethylGuard, one of the problems that can happen is as you remove that roadblock, you got all these toxins sitting behind there, and they come rushing through. And if you open it up too wide, the active detoxing actually triggers cytokines, okay? Remember I talked about cytokines tonight? Those are the chemicals that make you feel bad in Lyme. But if you overproduce them, you're going to feel bad anytime you overproduce them. And one way to overproduce them is by detoxing too quickly with the MTHFR. The other component of the MethylGuard is a methylated form of B12. And when you use that with the 5-methytetrahydrofolate, that also helps correct this abnormality too, all right? So if you're going to use it, everyone, start low and slow. 1 pill, maybe a day, maybe 1 pill every other day. Slowly work your way up to 3 pills 1 time a day, all right? So how do you know if you have this problem? Well, you might have it, again, if you're the person that's sensitive to everything, okay? But there's a test you can do, and it's a genetic test. And you would go to a site called geneticgenie.org. So that's GENETIC, Genie, GENIE.org. all right? And you're going to land on their homepage. And on that homepage, you're going to see a link to something called a methylation analysis. That'll be on the left-hand side. But on the right-hand side, it's going to tell you to get a test kit to see if you have this problem from a company called 23andMe, all right? So 23andMe, click on that link, and you're going to go to 23andMe, and then you're going to order up a test kit that looks at your spit. And you order that up. I think it's $95 or $99. And what 23andMe does is they can do a raw data analysis of your genetic material, but they don't interpret it. They used to, but the Food and Drug Administration here in the States tells them they can't do that anymore. So what Genetic Genie does then is they have a tab you can click called Methylation Analysis. You take the raw data that you get from 23andMe and you plug it into the Genetic Genie program, and they will tell you, based upon their computer's analysis of that raw data, whether you have this detox abnormality or not, okay? So for, I think, $95 or $99, you can get your answers to whether that's a problem. If you do have it as a problem, it's useful to deal with it, all right? Now, I don't often say that people need to deal with it right away. Remember I showed you earlier that there's steps to take it 6 to 9 months if you're not getting better. One of those is to start looking at a lot of your detox problems, all right? Let me go ahead and do a screen share here because I want to show you a few things that I just talked about here that you can come back and look later, okay? These are going to be found within the Treat Lyme book. All right, so I'm sitting here within the Treat Lyme book. I want to go back here to our table of contents, all right? And in the table of contents, there is a chapter called Detoxification. And there is an article called Detoxification 101, all right? So you can take a look at this. This just has the in and out basic things you want to do for detox, like support your liver, drink plenty of water, avoid putting toxins in. Take a look at this. Is the basic steps, okay? The other thing that I have here, remember I just said glutathione, that's the greatest chemical, has many different functions, including detox. We call it glutathione, the great fixer. Again, it talks about how it can help repair nerves, talks about how it can decrease cytokines. Take a look here, more information about how you use glutathione and the different forms that it comes in, okay? And then in terms of detox, what we've just been talking about is this article called MTHFR and Detoxification, a Lyme bite. It basically just goes through the material I just covered about MTHFR detoxification. There's actually a video associated with this article as well too, okay? And then here in this chapter, you see we have other things. We talk about what to do about Lyme toxins and mold toxins. There's another article here about whether you should do saunas to detox and how that might work too, okay? So this is a good chapter to look at in terms of detox, all right? The other thing, there was something else I was going to show you here. Oh, yeah, I know. I'm going to go back to the table of contents here again. All right. So there's a whole chapter we have about can't get better, do this, okay? This chapter looks at what do you do if you're not getting better? And again, these are things to look at, I think, at about 6 to 9 months and beyond. Regarding the MTHFR defect, again, if you are a person that has a lot of problems with handling any medication, I probably would correct for it right at the beginning, okay? But for all other people, the things you might want to start looking at are when you're not getting better at 6 to 9 months, start looking at whether you have a detoxification problems. And so you can see here the methylation, the MTHFR. We talk about looking at Lyme and mold biotoxins, look at heavy metal issues, okay? You also want to start looking at what to do about biofilms, possibly. Biofilms are layers of slime that can cover your Lyme germs and block treatment. You might want to look to see, do you have issues with chronic viruses? We talked about this earlier, but if you're 6 to 9 months in treatment, you're not getting better, look at steps you can take to fix your mitochondria. If you're not getting better 6 to 9 months in, make sure that you don't have a co-infection that was missed, okay? Other things you can correct, some people that get into chronic Lyme, 6 to 9 months, they're not getting better. Sometimes this can be due because Lyme has triggered an immune system attack on your body, or we call that autoimmune illnesses, all right? And we can use something called low-dose naltrexone to help with that. And finally, make sure you don't have too many yeast as a problem, okay? So regarding every one of these issues I raised, take a look down here. You're going to see articles about how to look at that. So there's one on yeast, There's one on viruses. There's one about your mitochondria. There's one about what is Lyme disease overall. It's a mess of problems, okay? And it'll tell you all these things that interfere with getting better. Talk about what to do about your co-infections like Babesia, low-dose naltrexone to help with that autoimmune problem, heavy metal detox, biofilms, what to do about those biofilms, Lyme and mold toxins, MTHFR, and then also there's an article here about what to expect. How long does it take to get better? Will you get better, okay? So take a look here in this chapter. There's a lot of useful resources about what to do when you're not getting better. All right, now the key thing about you want to make sure you're doing is, in addition to looking at all these things that I just said to look at, is make sure always that you're following those steps in our successful treatment recipe, okay? Those are the basics. You only start branching out into all those things I just showed you if you're about 6 to 9 months into treatment and you're not getting better and you followed all of the key steps of our successful treatment recipe, like being on curcumin to lower your cytokines and getting yeast under control and taking ashwagandha to support your adrenals, okay? If you're doing all that kind of stuff, you're not getting better, then take a look at all those steps I just told you about, all right? Now you may wonder, why I recommend not throwing everything at you at the same time and not investigating for everything at the same time. The reason is when you have Lyme, you don't necessarily need to correct every abnormality. You just need to fix enough stuff so your body turns on and starts taking care of itself, okay? So Lyme disease ultimately is something we call a total load phenomenon illness. And what that means is you have the effect of the Lyme germ and its co-infection. That's one problem that creates disease, okay? Another problem you can have is that you got too many yeast in you. That creates disease. You may have problems with heavy metal toxins. That creates disease. You may have problems with your mitochondria not functioning correctly. That creates disease. And there's many things that add up. Now, you don't need to correct everything to start feeling better. You just need to correct enough of them that you feel better, okay? And so that's why you'll see in our successful treatment recipe, we don't say fix everything right away. We identify the key things you should fix right away. And often when you do that, you don't need to follow these other steps that I just outlined in the Can't Get Better, Do This chapter, okay? All right, so I hope you'll take a look at some of that information we have in the Treat Lyme book, all right? All right, so let me move on here. Let's see here. Hello, Craig. Let's see. All right, so Craig, let's see. Can you comment on a study showing that Borrelia may be eradicated with pulse therapy using Rocephin alone? Have you tried this with patients? If so, did it help, and how was it pulsed? Okay, so there's some competing science out there right now, all right, that I want to talk about. And then I want to talk about just some practical experience. So recently there were some test tube experiments, I guess that's what I call them, or Petri dish experiments, where the authors did some bench science. In other words, this is not experiments done in humans. This is in a laboratory, all right? And what they found, what they started looking at is this idea that for some people in Lyme, there can be what are called persistor cells, or maybe persistor cells are more what we call the cyst form of Lyme, for instance, or maybe biofilm communities with Lyme germs in it, okay? But they identify what they call persistor cells, all right? And the idea is that the persistor cells are forms of Lyme that can occur after the germ, after we've treated the antibiotics for a long period of time continuously with antibiotics, all right? So there's a theory that that's what leads to persistor cells, and it's a theory, everyone, okay? Now, what the authors did in their study is that they took Lyme that had been treated for a long time with antibiotics, they stopped treating. And then they re-exposed it again to antibiotics, and they stopped, re-exposed it to antibiotics, stopped, re-exposed to antibiotics, stopped. They did it 4 times, all right? So they started, stopped, okay? That's called pulsing antibiotics. And what they found is in their test tube experiments that they got rid of all the Lyme this way, all right? There's also some experiments that show with doxycycline when you pulse, though, that the persistors keep living on, all right? So I'm not sure if doing the experiments in the way that they did in test tubes or Petri dish actually means anything in humans, all right? Now, their experiments looked at using Rocephin alone, this most recent one. Now, Rocephin alone, everyone, treats spirochete Lyme and probably doesn't do anything about intracellular Lyme or the microscopic cyst form of Lyme. So I'm not sure if that would work in humans, all right? Now, Dr. Burrascano, many of you know the name Burrascano. Burrascano is a physician who was one of the pioneers of Lyme disease treatment in this country. He came up with a way of pulsing antibiotics, which would be to use antibiotics, whether it's IV antibiotics like Rocephin or other antibiotics, but to treat, as I understood it, all three forms of the Lyme germ with either oral or IV antibiotics, use them for a period of time, maybe up to 2 months, and then stop and get really, really sick. Wait until you get really sick, because when you get really sick, that means the germ has come out of either its dormant form or persistor state, is active, is growing again. Then you come back and you use your antibiotics for about 2 months, okay? And what he did that about 4 times and believes that he was able to cure himself of Lyme. And there's another a person that writes about this too, a woman named Pamela Weintraub. Pamela was an executive editor for Discover magazine. She's done a lot of writing. You may find a book of hers called Cure Unknown. It's about the Lyme disease epidemic. But she would also say, and she stated it publicly, and I believe in Cure Unknown, she's stated it too, that she thinks she cured herself of Lyme doing something similar, okay? Now, in the Burrascano approach, what he believes is that Lyme goes into a dormant form if you treat continuously with antibiotics, and it doesn't grow enough, basically. And when it's not growing enough, the antibiotics can't work. Okay, that's his theory. And so, yeah, I've tried his approach. And so I find in my patients that aren't getting better that if I do start pulsing about 2 months on, 2 months off of antibiotics, and usually I use antibiotics that treat all 3 forms of the Lyme germ, okay? If you start pulsing on and off for about 2 months at a time, I find that people get, well, maybe about 20 to 30% of the time. I don't see that same success rate that Burrascano had with himself and maybe in Pamela Weintraub, okay? But it's a theory. It's something I look at people. The other thing I use if I get into somebody that's not getting better, we've had on antibiotics for a long time, based on experiments that were performed in Petri dishes, glorified Petri dishes, I should say, by a researcher named Eva Chapi, that's spelled S-A-P-I. Eva showed in her experiments, she looked at Lyme that was in biofilm communities, and she would look at that as persistor state or dormant Lyme. She was able to show that Banderol cemento, those 2 herbs I talked about earlier, my favorite 2 herbs to treat Lyme disease, that those 2 herbs were able to eradicate 100% of biofilm community and get rid of most of the cyst Lyme, intracellular Lyme, and spirochete Lyme, okay? So one of the things I'll do when I get somebody that I think is in a state where they're not responding to antibiotics anymore, they're not getting better, I will consider this pulsing that I just mentioned that Dr. Burrascano would have done. But also sometimes I'll just put people on Banderol cemento and I get some great improvements that come out of that too, okay? So Craig, there's some science that says using Rocephin in a pulsed form in a test tube works. There's some science that shows using doxycycline in a pulsed form actually does not work. And I don't know if you use just one antibiotic alone in humans if it will work. If we look at Burrascano's experience, pulsing 2 months on, 2 months off roughly can get people well. I only see that works about 20, 30% of the time in my practice. My preference actually is to treat with Banderol cemento to treat for persistor Lyme or what I call dormant Lyme. Okay, now I want to do a quick screen share here, everyone, so you can come back later and look at some information here. Okay, so I'm back in the Treat Lyme book here, everyone. All right, so a couple of things I'm going to show you here that you can come back and look at later, okay? So in terms of what do we do to treat Lyme? In terms of what works, there's a chapter we have here called Articles. It's called the Anti-Germs, Prescriptions, and Herbs chapter, okay? In here, you're going to find a pretty comprehensive article that I've written about what to do about treating Lyme, okay? It's called Kills Lyme Germs, a Brief Antibiotic Guide. In it, we outline that there are 3 forms of the germ that you need to treat: spirochete, intracellular Lyme, and cyst Lyme. It also outlines that there can be biofilms. In the article, I write out about what the various families of antibiotics do, like the tetracyclines, for instance, can treat intracellular Lyme and spirochete Lyme. The penicillins are good about treating spirochete Lyme. But I lay out the various families of antibiotics and which form of the Lyme germ they can use. I also give you examples of ways you can put antibiotics together to treat all three forms of the germ. And in there, I talk about Banderol and Cemento as working as effectively as most prescription antibiotic combinations do, okay? All right, the other article that I want to show you is the article about Banderol Cemento, okay? So again, I keep mentioning this is my favorite herbs. Banderol is Otoba bark extract, cat's claw is Cemento. Take a look at this article. We talk about how to use them and the power of using these two herbs, okay? All right, now, tonight you have heard me talk a number of times about various herbs and how they might work. Many of you may wonder about where do you get these supplements, okay? So we maintain a supplement site called Marty Ross MD Terrabrook ND Supplements. These are the same supplements that we use with our patients. And in fact, this is where our patients come to order their supplements. They can get them here in my practice. They can also order them on site, all right? And what we've done is we've taken the mystery out of selecting the best supplements. We've done it for you, okay? The problem with supplements, as many of you know, there's tons of them out there. And most of them are likely garbage, to be quite honest with you. Most supplements, when researchers go into supplement stores and they pull them off the shelf, what they find is the majority of them use low quality ingredients that don't work, or what they say is in the product isn't even there, or they may use fillers to fill up their pill that may actually harm you, okay? So what we've done is we've gone through and picked brands of supplements that we know have a track record of having good quality ingredients, and also that do not actually use artificial ingredients that can harm you, okay? So this is where you can find them here. So for instance, I've mentioned tonight curcumin. If you want to see what we use for curcumin, you can just go ahead and type it in our search box here, hit go, and that's going to lead you to our curcumin products, of which this one, Mariva 500, happens to be our favorite, okay? All right, so that's how you can figure out which supplements are the ones that we recommend that we think have the greatest chance of working for you. Okay, let me go back here. All right, that's a mouthful, Craig. I just wanted to make sure I answered this and about persistor cells and talked about what kind of recommendations do we have to get over Lyme as well too. All right. So one thing too, everyone, I know when you start reading our Treat Lyme book, and it's available by subscription. There's useful information. The way I'm talking to you tonight, the ease and the basic nature that I explain things are the same ways that I do in those articles, okay? And it gives you a lot of information, so you don't even have to wait for these webinars. You can actually read it and not have to wait for me to respond to your question, okay? And there's information there you can use to build your own treatments. We talk a lot about supplements, or you can use it to augment the treatment that your prescription pad doctor does, or to bring ideas into your doctor that maybe they're not thinking about. You know, I get patients that bring ideas to me all the time, and boy, sometimes they're right on. I'm like, wow, that's a good idea. We should look at doing that with you, okay? And in this illness, as many of you know, you need to help direct your care. So we give you the resources to do that in our Treat Lyme book. So I encourage you to subscribe. The way you can subscribe is click on any article you want to read, and if you're not subscribed, a page is going to come up to say subscribe. Okay, it's pretty simple to do. All right, so that's it for the Treat Lyme book. All right, let me go on here. So Craig, thank you for that question. All right, let's see here. Hello, Jane. Let's see. Hello to you too. Does grapefruit seed extract interact with any of the antibiotics used to treat Lyme and co-infections? So grapefruit seed extract is not grapefruit juice. All right, so let me just start by saying that. So many of you may be aware that pharmacists will often tell you, or they'll put labels on your medicines that say don't take with grapefruit juice. The issue with grapefruit juice is there is a chemical found in grapefruit juice that can turn on liver metabolism to clean out certain medications. All right, that's the problem with grapefruit seed extract. It changes the metabolisms of certain medicines. Now that chemical, when we use this thing called grapefruit seed extract, which is the GSE, stands for grapefruit seed extract, everyone. Grapefruit seed extract is a really great herb for treating microscopic cyst form of Lyme. Remember I said Lyme exists in 3 states, okay? So grapefruit seed extract is a really good herb to go after the cyst form of the Lyme germ. All right, now, it does come from grapefruit, and it does have small amounts of that chemical that is found in grapefruit juice, but it's microscopic amounts of that chemical, all right? And it is safe to take with those medicines that they say not to have with grapefruit, okay? So I have people take it with their medicines. It does not act like grapefruit juice. It is grapefruit seed, minor amounts of that chemical. And so you can take it with any medicines. I don't find people having problems with it, all right? So I hope that answers your question. And then more specifically, does it interact with any of the antibiotics? No, I don't find it interacting adversely with any of the antibiotics, okay? All right. Thanks for that question, Jane. Good luck to you. All right, let's see here. A question from Debbie. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. My LPPLA is 252, high risk over 235. What does this mean? Also, any concern about my Epstein-Barr virus antibody VCA IgG over 600 and HHV6 IgG 6.5? Thanks. Okay, so there's a lot of initials you did here, which is confusing. Let me try to make some sense of some of them, though, okay? So first of all, I don't know what you mean by LPPLA. I'm sorry, I just don't know. I haven't seen that term used before. It's not a test I use in my practice. I would be very interested in responding to it, though. If you would go ahead, actually, if you would like to do this, you can write to me an email through my regular email, which is docmarty, DOCMARTY, at the Healing Arts Partnership, and that's arts with an S.net. So docmarty, DOCMARTY, at the healingartspartnership.net. And if you can provide an attachment of that test, I'll probably know what it is once I see what it is, okay? I'll be glad to get back to you. Now, everyone, this is an offer to Debbie. Please don't flood my personal email with your questions, all right? Ask them here, but only send me information if I said you can, okay? Because I probably won't respond because I've got a lot of questions to respond to here. Plus, after even the webinar tonight, I've got to respond to a lot of questions that came through from my own patients today, all right? So regarding about your other question, though, so EBV, everyone, is Epstein-Barr virus. That's the monovirus. VCA is a type of antibody that is made against the virus, and it's a type, that's further clarified by saying it's a type of a VCA type of antibody that's the IgG family. That's what your question is here. So if it's elevated, it does give some suggestion that your immune system is having a hard time keeping your monovirus that lives in you under control. Yes, everyone, there's a lot of us that cohabitate with the monovirus living in us, and it doesn't give us any problems. Our immune systems keep it under control. But when the antibodies become elevated, there is a theory that they become active, that those viruses like the Epstein-Barr virus become active, and that can make it cause more problems with Lyme, gives us more Lyme-like symptoms, which are really Epstein-Barr virus symptoms, okay? Your HHV6 IgG is measured through a different technique. That 6.5 is elevated, but I would be more concerned if it was 8 or higher, so probably not a problem. And even though your Epstein-Barr virus antibody is elevated, I don't know that I necessarily would go after it, okay? And let me tell you why. So if we were to pull 100 healthy people off the street, there is science that shows us that around maybe 10 to 20% have antibody elevation against Epstein-Barr or HHV6 virus or another virus called cytomegalovirus, okay? This is in healthy people, 10% of healthy people or so, all right? So these occur in healthy people. Their immune systems keep them under control, doesn't bother them. Now in Lyme, what can happen is we may get more viral activity because our immune system loses its ability to keep these germs under control. because of Lyme suppressing the immune system, too many cytokines being made, hormonal suppression. All right, so what I like to do, I don't like to hit the viruses head on to begin with. What I'd like to do is follow all the steps in our successful treatment recipe that I showed you earlier at our site, www.treatlyme.net. It's our treatment guideline. If you follow those steps, those basic first 10 or 11 steps, that's going to boost the immune system so we can put those viruses back under control, okay? And so I usually don't even want to do something that's a specific antivirus treatment until somebody is about 6 to 9 months into treatment if they're not doing better, okay? And I showed you articles earlier tonight that you can look at to get more information on that. If you happen to be joining us here late, take a look at the recording tomorrow. You'll see where I covered those, okay? But you can also read about how to treat viruses in the Treat Lyme book and how you diagnose those viruses in the Treat Lyme book too, okay? All right. Debbie, thank you for that question. All right, moving on here. Let's see here. Next question is from Gloria. All right, so how you doing there, Gloria? Welcome here. Let's see, I had a CD50, or I think what you mean is a CD57, not a CD7 test. There's a test called a CD57. CD57, everyone, is a specific type of white blood cell, a very specific kind, okay, that can be low when somebody has active Lyme disease. It's low about 80% of the time. We're not aware, and there may be some other things that cause it to be low too. So it's not specific for Lyme, right? In other words, when it comes back low, it does not prove you have Lyme in you. So for instance, we know that when somebody has the AIDS virus infection, for instance, they can have low CD57. And I question actually if there are other virus infections that get in us, like the ones we were just talking about, that may also cause a low CD57 as well too, okay? All right, so having a low CD57 does not prove you have Lyme disease, all right? So let's see, I had a CD57 test that was very low and a Western blot with only reactive number on the IgG41 or band 41, everyone. Do you have an opinion about what this may show? I'm also on clarithromycin and tinidazole, pulsing. What do you recommend in the way of probiotics, when to take them and how often? Okay, so everyone, I'm going to break this into a few parts here for you, okay, Gloria? So first of all, when you're on prescription antibiotics, there is always great risk that you're going to knock off good bacteria that live in your intestines. And when you knock down good bacteria that live in your intestines, it makes it a lot easier for yeast that also live in your intestines to grow too much, right? Now, as many of you heard earlier tonight in the webinar, the problem when you get too many yeast is they trigger increased cytokines, right? And basically, most of your Lyme disease symptoms are excess cytokine symptoms. So if you cause more cytokines with yeast, you're going to feel worse. Just like Lyme grows too much, it triggers too many cytokines, you feel worse. Same thing happens if you get too many yeast, okay? So we want to work to prevent too many yeast. And one of the ways to do that is to be on a good probiotic. What I tell people to do with probiotics is to make sure that you take them as far away from your antibiotics as you can. So for instance, that clarithromycin you're taking is a 2-time-a-day antibiotic. So if you take your clarithromycin in the morning and you take it at nighttime, somewhere in the middle of the day, take your probiotic. Tinidazole is an antibiotic that treats the cyst form of Lyme. It can treat intracellular Lyme and is great at removing biofilms, at least according to some Petri dish experiments. So tinidazole, depending on your weight, is a 2-time-a-day or a 3-time-a-day. If it's 2 times a day, again, take your probiotics in the middle of the day. If you're having to use it 3 times a day, what I tell people to do is make sure you take your probiotic at least 2 hours away from your antibiotic, okay? So that should answer that question, okay? Now, what probiotic to use? Well, my favorite probiotic is to use a probiotic that comes from the earth, a soil-based probiotic. And the reason I'm starting to use a soil-based probiotic is there's good science that shows that bacteria from the soil helps the immune system work better, does a better job actually fighting yeast is what I'm finding in my practice, okay? So here's what the deal is with soil-based probiotics. The bacteria that make up our intestines have shifted dramatically over the last 100 to 200 years. It used to be a lot more closely related to what came out of the ground. And how we got bacteria in our guts that came out of the ground is we used to walk out our door and pluck our beets out of the ground. I mean, you know, sometimes we would do that, right? But we were close to our food source. And we would wash our beets, for instance, but even when we would wash our beets, we would still get microscopic amounts of soil on that beet, and we would eat it, and we would get the bacteria from the soil, all right? But we're so far removed from our food sources, where our food is grown, that we don't have any of this dirt film anymore. So we're not getting that good bacteria. So I'd like to have people take that. So my favorite is to do a soil-based probiotic. The product I like to use is made by Research Nutritionals, and it's a product called Prescript Assist Pro. And I would do 2 pills of it 1 time a day. Another option, if you can't tolerate that, is to use a product that we'd like to use made by a company called Seroil. It's called HMF Forte, 2 pills 1 time a day also. Now, it uses bacteria that are proven to repopulate your intestines, and you've got to be really careful, everyone, with your probiotics. Most of the stuff out there is just absolute garbage, okay? It's not been shown to repopulate your intestines. The HMF Forte has been shown to do that. So if you're going to do probiotics, make sure you get something that's going to work, okay? Both those products we do have at our store, by the way. All right, now, back to your question. Let's see. So anyhow, that answers your question about probiotics. Okay, so in terms of, do I have an opinion about your test? Well, low CD57 is a clue that you might have Lyme. Doesn't prove it, okay? In terms of your Western blot, having just an IgG positive band alone is not enough to say that you have Lyme. So I don't know whether you have Lyme based on your studies. I can't say, okay? So there are 4 things that we look at that I like to look at to figure out if somebody has Lyme, all right? Those 4 things are, what's the risk of getting it? All right, so for instance, a person that gets a tick bite in New Jersey, where studies show about 95 to 100% of the ticks carry Lyme, has a high probability of having Lyme, all right? Versus a person that doesn't remember a tick bite that never goes outside of their home has a very low probability of having Lyme. If you happen to be a deer hunter, even if you've never had a tick bite, you have a high probability of Lyme. All right. Now, the other thing I will let you know, I think that that it's possible that there's more than ticks that give us Lyme. So 50% of the time that somebody has Lyme, they don't remember tick bite. There's European studies that show that fleas, mosquitoes, mites, and flies carry Lyme. Doesn't prove they transmit, but gosh, when only 50% of the time that somebody has Lyme do they remember a tick bite, you gotta wonder if something else is spreading it, okay? And I'm pretty sure that for one of my patients that got sick immediately after mosquito bites and developed Lyme disease, that it was a mosquito that gave it to her, okay? Now I know that's anecdotal, it's just based upon my experience 1 time, but you got the European studies that show it, okay? But anyhow, we still look to see what your risk, all right? Highest risk would be if you've got risk of coming in proximity to ticks, all right? All right, second thing we look at is, do you have symptoms that look like Lyme? Third thing we look at is, do you have any physical exam findings suggesting Lyme? And then the 4th thing we look at is, do you have any testing that is supportive of Lyme? And what I would say is the CD57 is really not that great of a test, and your Western blot is very weak in that regard too, all right? So what I'm gonna recommend you take a look at, because I tell you steps that you can take when you have kind of this mixed picture, like what else can you do, all right? And I also give you a lot more information about how do you know if you have Lyme, even if your testing is negative. There's an article that you can take a look at. And let me do a screen share so I can show that to you. Okay, so I'm back in the Treat Lyme book, and go to the table of contents here. All right, so there's a chapter that we have called How to Diagnose. All right, and in here is information about how to diagnose if you have too many yeast, for instance. How do you diagnose viruses? I talked about that earlier, okay? And then the big one is how to diagnose chronic Lyme disease. It's more than a test, okay? So 20% of people can have Lyme and not even have a positive test. So click on this link. This is a 15-minute video that will pull up that is from a webinar I gave about how to diagnose Lyme. It's got a lot of useful information about symptoms to consider, about the various kinds of testing, what's the best test, for instance. What do you do if your testing is not the greatest, doesn't give you the best result? One of the things I recommend is just doing a trial of antibiotics and retesting, for instance, okay? But take a look at this article. It's a 15-minute video, gives you the ins and outs that you need to figure out if you have Lyme, all right? All right, so let me go back here. Okay, so that should answer your question. Thank you, Gloria. Good luck to you. All right, let's see here. All right, so Eric, you've written a question to me that for some reason is not allowing me to repost. So bear with me a minute. I'm going to actually repost it in my name. And then I'm going to show it so that everyone can see it here. All right, now let me see if I can pull that up. Well, why did that not go? There we go. Now it went. All right, so I'm going to broadcast this. Okay, so this is, it looks like it's my question, but it's actually from Eric. You can see his name there, okay? Hi, Dr. Ross. What do you think of high-dose IV vitamin C? I don't have Lyme, but have prostate biopsy pin cells, precancer cells. Will this help? Any negatives to this treatment? I'm currently recovering from total knee replacement 2 weeks ago. All right. So everyone, high-dose vitamin C means a lot higher than you can take orally, all right? So when we use vitamin C orally, you can take it as 1,000 milligrams. Some people can get all the way up to about 10,000 milligrams. The thing that limits your ability to get vitamin C and when you take it orally is when you get up to higher doses, it can lead to diarrhea, okay? Now, at low doses, it is a good antioxidant. It can help repair damage, right? At high doses, like 30 to 50 grams, it actually is an oxidizing agent that can damage membranes. So it can damage nerve membranes, germ membranes, all right? So we can use it at that kind of dose to actually kill germs. But it can damage cell membranes and cancer membranes, so it can be used to kill cancer as well too, okay? Now the problem with high-dose vitamin C is, yeah, it can work for cancer, and yeah, it can work to kill Lyme germs, but boy, it might have a high cost, especially for people with Lyme, because it could damage your normal cells, all right? Now in cancer, maybe it makes sense to give it a try because there may be more of a risk of you're going to use it probably a more limited basis than you might in Lyme. But in Lyme, it is not something I would want to use repeatedly to kill the Lyme germs because there may be long-term consequences down the road. Short-term, like maybe over a week or 2 weeks, it might be okay to do. I'm not a big believer in doing it longer than that. And actually in a woman of childbearing age, I would not do the high-dose vitamin C or any of the oxidizing agents like hydrogen peroxide or ozone. Those are also oxidizing agents like high-dose vitamin C, and they may damage your egg cells, for instance, if you're a woman. So I would be very, very careful about doing that. All right? All right. Eric, thank you for that question. Let's see. All right, got rid of that. All right, let me keep moving on here, everyone. All right. Hello, Melissa. Let's see. My ND is questioning babesiosis as during treatment for Lyme, I developed 2 new symptoms of shortness of breath and a cough, which are still ongoing. And my Lyme symptoms have also worsened again. Should I get tested? What herbals do you like for babesiosis? All right. So it's possible. let's talk about what Babesia symptoms are, and then I'm going to give you another idea that could be going on too. All right. So there's an article I have, everyone, that you can look at later if you can't get this one down, or if you don't remember what I'm saying, basically. All right. So there's an article that we have in the How to Diagnose section of the Treat Lyme book called "Is it Bartonella or Babesia? The Signs or Symptoms?" Okay. Take a look at that, and you'll see about. Actually, I think I have a whole article called How to Diagnose Babesia too. You can find that in the How to Diagnose chapter too. All right. All right. So when it comes to Babesia, I like to make the diagnosis based on clinical grounds, meaning what are the symptoms and what kind of physical exam findings might we have. The reason for that is we recognize that with Babesia, there may be about 15 to 20 strains. And testing, we only have testing that can identify about 2 or 3 different strains using antibodies. All right, there's also a microscope exam called a FISH test, but you really got to have a lot of Babesia in it for it to pick it up. In other words, our testing for Babesia is not that good. All right, and so basically I'll make my decisions to treat based on the symptoms. Okay, so what symptoms suggest Babesia? Well, one of the hallmark symptoms that occurs in most people that have Babesia is they're going to have drenching night sweats, okay? Sweats that soak the sheet, or they're going to have some increased night sweats. Another big symptom people might get are panic attacks. Some people will have air hunger, as you're describing, meaning you just feel like you can't get enough air in. Some people will have racing and skipping of the heart. Sometimes people will have headaches. More usually, if it's a Babesia headache, it's going to be in the front of the head. Some people with the Babesia get increased frequency of deja vu experiences. That's my favorite Babesia symptom. I think it's very odd that that happens, but it does happen. And then some people can get nasal stuffiness and coughing, okay? So yeah, there's the possibility, because you have those starting, that you could have Babesia. But there's another thing that can cause both of those. And especially if these symptoms weren't there at the beginning, I would question if you might have developed too many intestinal yeast, okay? So too many intestinal yeast can, what happens when you have too many yeast in the intestines, not only does it cause your immune system to make too many cytokines, making you feel worse, but it also can trigger allergic type reactions throughout the body and can set off asthma in your lungs and may even lead to nasal congestion too. So I would consider if you might have too many yeast here as well, all right? So too many yeast, symptoms of too many yeast can be you're starting to feel worse. Okay, that's because you're making too many cytokines to deal with those yeast. And that worse can be more fatigue, brain not working as well, more body pains, okay? But also too many yeast can cause sugar cravings, may cause intestinal gasiness or bloating. Yeast can also give you too much acne, actually, or it can make allergic conditions worse, okay? And if you're a woman, you might have increased vaginal itching or vaginal discharge too. All right, so just look and see. It might be that you've got yeast going on here, not actually symptoms of Babesia, okay? All right, artemisinin, in terms of can it treat Babesia? All right, so everyone, there's a whole article I have on how do you treat Babesia, of which I do talk about herbs in there, but I also talk about the prescriptions, okay? The prescriptions work better. I just want you to know that. They work about 85 to 90% of the time. You can take a look at that article. It's called How to or Kills Babesia, a brief guide. Take a look at that. It's in the How to Treat chapter. I'll show you where it is here in a minute. But one of the herbs you can use that I mentioned there is an herb called artemisinin. Artemisinin, I think, works about 75 to 80% of the time. Prescriptions will work about 75 to 80, or about 80 to 85 to 90% of the time. So prescriptions 85 to 90% of the time. Artemisinin 75 to 80% of the time. There's another herb called Cryptolepis. It also works about 75 to 80% of the time. My favorite herb, though, would be the artemisinin, and it can work quite well. I usually have people take it at a really high dose for 3 days, and then after 3 days, decrease it. Don't take it for 11 days. The reason I do that, dosing that way, is that the intestines can develop an enzyme that will deactivate the artemisinin if you use it repeatedly, okay? And that goes away. That enzyme goes away if you stop for those 11 days. High dose means to take a 100 milligram pill. Usually I have people start at 3 pills or 300 milligrams, so 3 of the 100 milligram pills 3 times a day for 3 days in a row, then take 11 days off. If that doesn't significantly flare you up, then you want to go up to 4 pills 3 times a day during the second round, and eventually up to 5 pills 3 times a day. Okay? All right. Now, artemisinin here in the States, some of the doctors from the East Coast are reporting that it's not working that well. And I think there may be some resistance that's developing out there. Here on the West Coast of the United States, where I am, I find artemisinin still works quite well. Okay? All right, so I'm going to just do a quick screen share, Melissa and everyone, to just show you some resources that you might want to take a look at. All right, so let's see here, screen share again. Okay, so we're back in the Treat Lyme book here. I'm going to go over here to the table of contents again, and let's look at the how to treat. Okay, so well, actually the how to diagnose. We'll do that one first. All right, so if you need more information, more specifics about how to diagnose Babesia than what I just gave you, although I think I pretty much gave you the specifics, take a look at this article called How to Diagnose Babesia, okay? I believe it has even got a video associated with it that I created from one of the webinars before. Talks about the problems with testing, talks about the key symptoms that you want to look at, all right? Okay, then in terms of how to treat Babesia, there's different ways of skinning the cat on this one. And I would look under the infection treatment plans. And in the article called Kills Babesia, a Brief Guide, which is this article right here, I lay out 3 different tiers of treatment. So that's TIER. Tier 1 are the antimicrobials that have the best chance. They work about, again, 85% of the time. Tier 2 treatments, of which artemisinin is that, work about 80% of the time. And then there's some 75 to 80% of the time. And then there's some tier 3 treatments. But I lay out more specifically how to use the various treatments, what to do, what the drugs are in the Kills Babesia Brief Guide treatment. Take a look at that, okay? All right, let me go back here. Okay, everyone, that's it for me tonight. We've actually spent about an hour and a half here talking. Had a good crew show up here tonight. Actually, I've had one of the largest turnouts I've had in a while here. If you find these helpful, go ahead and share it with your friends, okay? The more people that I can help, the better. I like trying to help people get well. Please share the link with our webinars to your friends. Again, and even feel free to share the video link with your friends that you know have Lyme tomorrow too. If this is your first time here and you want to start getting emails about the webinars, on our webinar page at our www.treatlyme.net site, on the webinars page, there is a place that you can subscribe to be on our webinars email list too, okay? Oh, before I go, there's one other screen share I just want to show people too. Let me go back here. Okay, so I'm back on our Treat Lyme site. Again, this is the Treat Lyme and Associated Diseases, okay? So there's a few things, resources I want to show you, okay? Number 1, there's our Lyme disease treatment guidelines, okay? Take a look at these. These are the basic steps you should do. There's our webinars page, okay? And this is where, now how did that happen? Let me go back here. All right, so there's our webinars page too, okay? And it looks like I've got to reset that up. It was blocked for people, all right? But anyway, when I unblock that, you'll be able to go there, all right? And then there's a page that is about how to do consults, all right? So I love helping people, and there's ways that I can help you online. Look at our one-to-one medical consult service, and through this service, I can actually help you as well too, okay? Anyhow, let me go back here again. Okay, so it's great visiting with everyone tonight. Please sign up for next week's webinar. You can do that after the webinar is over. I will unblock that page here in a minute, or I will provide the link for you tomorrow to sign up for those webinars as well too. And in a second here, I'm going to take you back to the Treat Lyme site. If you want to subscribe to the book to get more of that information, just click on any of the articles and any of the chapters, and that will pull up the screen for you to subscribe, okay? All right, good night, everyone. It's been great visiting with you here tonight. And I look forward to seeing you next week. All right, bye-bye.